Okay, bag C. It looks like we're going to need our first aftermarket part or upgrade. Since this isn't from the aftermarket, this is a Tekno part. They give us some very nice polished ball studs. Or they say we should use a 5.5 millimeter wrench, which I have here. So there's our steering action, and considering how much plastic is here, I'm glad that I went with the aluminum piece. So let's see. Looks like it's going to be pretty easy to get to the differentials. Here's our front, and it faces the gear in this direction. And I am switching as much of the steel hardware as I can for titanium. Now, you notice I didn't put any grease in there. I can do it at any point right back through here. Okay, it looks like it's time to do that, though. We've got a little plate that goes on the bottom here. Doesn't take much. Don't see that that is a terribly necessary item. You could probably just put it right over top there without this little hatch on the bottom and not have it be any problem at all, especially if you're racing at groomed tracks where there's no water, at least nothing substantial. You might moisten the track if it's very dry and dusty. Let's go for bag D. I'll tell you one thing, this kit is going together very quickly, very, very quickly. And it's very simple. The more you do it, the more you take it apart and put it back together, the easier it's going to be. This is going to be our sway bar mount. Now you'll notice that on this case, they have us do 2 screws here and 2 screws up top. Whereas, excuse me, on our front, we leave these 2 holes open. I'm assuming there's something else that's going to go on there. So we're on to page 7 and bag E, and this is our rear suspension. And there's one thing that is going to be a little different about this. This is where the sway bars are going to come in, and I'm going to be deviating from the stock build. I'm following a setup sheet done by someone who races for Tekno. It's a similar track to what I'm going to be racing on, and there are currently 2 setup sheets available on Tekno, plus the blank one in PDF format, which is really nice. It's editable, so you can either type in your changes, or if you've got an iPad or a small tablet of some kind, you can keep the PDF on the tablet and make your edits directly to the PDF file, and then do a save as to keep iterations of your various setup sheets. Now, in this build, he's using a heavier sway bar in the rear than in the front, and substantially heavier than the stock one, the kit one. So if you want to follow that build, it's for Eric Fletcher. If you go to Tekno's website, you go to the product page for the SCT410SL, you'll see links across the top for things like option parts and whatnot. And one of them is, I think it's either info or setup sheets. Forgive me, I haven't been in the page for a few. Printed these out yesterday. In any event, on that you will find the 2 setup sheets that they currently have available for you as reference, as well as the blank sheet. So you can get this one yourself and follow that build. The front one is, I believe, is going to be the same size as the kit one, so that won't be needed right away. But the rear sway bar, instead of a 1.5 millimeter, is going to be a a 1.9. And it would be nice if they gave us the acid etching on here. They paint stripes. It's hard to tell or to know what's what because there's no legend. I think the 1.9 is the thickest. Yes, it is the thickest one. So there is the sway bar I'm going to be using for this section of the build. One thing about Tekno kits, they are very solid. They give quality hardware. Okay, let's look at our C block and our D block. So our C block is our anti-squat, and we're going to need a pair of the center up. Now the stock position has it in the center, center left to right, center up and down. And so this is giving, this setup gives us a little more anti-squat. And our D block, the stock position is also center. And on this build, it's 2 to the left and 2 to the right. I'll show you up close what I mean by that. And I have to say, this looks like a good setup. Having it over to the left, I mean to the outsides a bit, is going to give a little bit of toe. And that is definitely, having a little rear toe is a good thing. It's not a lot of toe, but it's there. So let me just show you what we're looking at for the stock build. Would be 4 of these. right here. So everything is centered and centered. For our C block, we are going to be, this is up, so we have all the way up, and you can see how this is off-centered. That is going to give us some lift in the front of our pivots, and that's going to give us some anti-squat. It's going to make the car launch better instead of dropping the rear hard under acceleration. And as you can see, we have the two little indicators left and two to the right. That gives us a little bit of left and right. If we were using one to the left and right, the difference would look like these two. You can see how the one that's still here on the tree is further outboard, and that would be more toe. In fact, if you're having stability issues, having a hard time keeping the car going straight, stepping those out to the further side would be a good way to go about getting that problem solved, because that would add more rear toe. But we're going to go with this for now. Later on off camera, I'm going to trim all of these off. I'm going to go ahead and cut the washers now. But getting these trimmed and putting them in a parts box for your car is definitely something you should do. And again, I recommend those inexpensive tackle boxes. They seem to be have enough compartments that no matter what vehicle you have, you're not likely to run out of space. Okay. So the first thing we need is this little wheel lock here. Now this is plastic, so you are not going to need any Loctite on this. Basically, the purpose of this is to keep our sway bar centered. Now, you'll notice that there are these painted lines here. I recommend having them facing upwards as opposed to downwards. That way you can easily identify the sway bar you have without having to look at your sheet. But you should record that on your setup sheet so you have it. And you want to get that dead center. I wouldn't tighten it down hard right now. I would point the grub screw rearward and slightly up. And just get it into place, because you can do a fine adjustment on that once this assembly is together. So basically you're just putting everything together here the way you see it. There's not much to that. Just follow the basic rules of using Loctite when you've got metal on metal. Try not to overdo the Loctite. You want to be able to get these things off someday. Set up the ball studs so they are flush with the sway bar to the end of the ball studs hole. Okay, so the sway bars face rearward, as in that would be towards the rear. The plastic on these A-arms it's very nice. It's not brittle. It's got a kind of a softness to it. When you don't feel it when you touch it. Like if you wrap your fingernail on it, it feels very hard. But when you trim off these molding pieces with cutters, you can feel a bit of a softness there. There's obviously built to have a little bit of flex. Now, the two holes here that are above the sway bar are going to be for the last two small grub screws, and those are going to adjust this so it rotates within that space without having without it being able to jiggle. Okay, so let me rotate this around, and I want to loosen that and center it up. So that keeps the sway bar from moving left and right within a reasonable range. Now we have to tune the tension on the sway bar. You want the sway bar to move easily, but you don't want it to jiggle, because that just takes away from its function. Okay, I'm happy with that. So, yes, these might have been easier to do when this was off, but I'll make do. These are our drop screws right here. I would just make them flush for now, or close to it. What those are going to do is those are going to impact the little tabs here on either side of the chassis, front and rear, and those will allow us to set a minimum amount of suspension travel, or droop. You never want the car to be up on its springs. In other words, you don't want the A-arms to be at a lock where they are as far as the shocks will go and the springs are holding the car up against it, so that when you lift the vehicle, the tires don't go down at all. There's no sag in the suspension. Without that droop, the suspension has nowhere to go when there's a dip, and that means your suspension really only works in a single direction, and that's not good. Okay, we need 2 14s and 2 18s. I have the 14s in titanium, but I do not have the 18s. So wow, I really like this. The way this is going together is quite nice. But I want to do something here. I want to pop both these arms off. And I want to check if these need any adjustment. That's pretty good. It's a little tight. Let me see if I've got... a reamer that's the right size. Okay, that's better. It's still kind of tight. I'm going to take a little more off there. Okay, for those of you who are not aware, this is called a reamer. And if you look at it up close, you'll see that it has these little chisel-shaped cuts in it, and what those do is actually remove a little bit of material from a given body part. And what you do is you run this through again and again and again, preferably over a trash can, and back and forth, and do it as many times as needed to remove enough material so that you have a smooth action. Now, it's nice that it does this, but these are heavy arms, so you would expect them to move. You do want to remove as much bind as possible, and sometimes it'll be bound up tight, and you really need to do it a lot. It depends on how well the kit is manufactured. Still doesn't like fall out, but the movement is very smooth, so I'm going to go with that. I'm not going to try to gouge too much out of these. Now, do we need any plastic washers in there? It doesn't say so. So let's go ahead and plug these in. That is a lot of tow. I think I'm going to deviate slightly from that recommendation and go center in the rear. And not run quite so much rear tow. I can always switch it back. Okay, now we definitely need some washers in here. There's a lot of space, and even centered, there's a lot of tow in there. I'm just going to make some updates here. Let's see, rear sway bar is go 1.7. Okay, I misread that setup sheet. I want a 1.7. So I need to swap out the rear sway bar. And the 1.9 goes in the front. So this is easy enough to do. Bunch of little grub screws. There's no need to take these two grub screws out. Just switch your sway bar and then readjust them. Now, if you're going up in size, especially by a decent amount, loosen them a little, but you don't need to remove them. And it's always easier to tune the sway bar when the linkages are not attached. And I will show you why. Okay, it's very easy to see how loose this is. So now, as you can see, the sway bar moves very easily, but it doesn't have any jiggle. Okay, now we need to think about our spacers.